stop using it. The rest is nature.
I actually don't like beards, but I actually think he looks really good on that beard. It was actually really funny. All right, Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team, take it from here. Shannon.
Listen, it shows up at my house every fall. It's called hunting season.
Oh.
But then we find the razor again, and I get real happy.
All right, have a great show.
Thanks, Laura. We begin with the Fox News alerts. With the president facing a new crisis in Syria, a deadly challenge to his America First policy, it appears at this late hour the commander-in-chief is holding firm in his plan to get our troops out of Syria. Ed Henry is investigating what's next. He is here live. Plus, Angel families storming the offices of Democratic leaders demanding they work with President Trump to build a border barrier. An Angel mother who tried to see both Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi joins us live to explain what happened in minutes. And later, another missing mother, this time in Texas, vanishing nearly 2 weeks ago. Tonight, her family speaking out. They say there is no way that she would just take off. Stick around for more on that case. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. We begin tonight with Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry with the latest from the White House as the president faces new challenges to his plans to get U.S. troops out of Syria. But he's actually got some breaking news on the legal front for the president tonight as well. Hey, Ed.
That's right, Shannon. This is a late-breaking development. The president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, obviously dealing with the Russia investigation. Robert Mueller's special counsel probe seems to have made some big news tonight. He was on CNN suggesting that he and the president have never suggested that campaign aides in the 2016 Trump campaign could have colluded with Russians. That in his previous comments, Giuliani is now saying he was only referring to the president himself, did not collude with the Russians. Giuliani saying in this interview that it would only have been a crime if the president had colluded with the Russians to hack the DNC emails. He said nothing like that happened, so there's no crime here, but seemed to leave the door open to the possibility that Trump campaign aides like Paul Manafort and others could have, and I stress, could have colluded with the Russians. That is different than what the president has said on more than a dozen occasions when he's tweeted and said in news conferences and public comments that there was no collusion at all in the campaign, not with the candidate himself, not with campaign aides. Giuliani, when pressed about Manafort sharing polling data with the Ukrainian, not a Russian, we should stress, but with the Ukrainian was insisting, I'm not sure, the attorney was saying, about what might have happened with campaign aides. Here's what he told CNN a short time ago.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes, you
I have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. There is not a single bit of evidence the President of the United States committed the only crime you could commit here, conspired with the Russians to hack the DNC.
So the significance is whether or not this was a deliberate attempt to open the door to the possibility of others colluding with the Russians or having some kind of conversations that could be construed that way in advance of Robert Mueller's final report, which we expect could come as early as February. So that is obviously going to be a story that is going to be getting a lot of pickup in the hours ahead. I've reached out to Rudy Giuliani himself, have not heard back yet to try and clarify these comments. But as you said, Shannon, it happens on a day of other major breaking news, the suicide attack in Syria. This is exactly what Republicans like Lindsey Graham have warned may happen if the U.S. pulls out of Syria too quickly. In fact, tonight, Graham plus an unnamed senior diplomat are putting some of the blame for the suicide attack with the president. But breaking tonight, the commander-in-chief is telling top senators in a private meeting he is not going to radically adjust his plans to draw down U.S. troops in both Syria and Afghanistan. All this coming after the U.S. Central Command confirmed that 4 Americans were killed in an explosion in Syria, 2 U.S. troops, as well as 2 American civilian defense workers. This coming just days after the administration began the process of withdrawing troops. Republican Rand Paul, though, said he's proud of the president as he emerged from a meeting on Syria late today at the White House. You see him there. This Kentucky senator says this president has guts to tell a group of senators, as well as the American people writ large, that the U.S. has been at war in too many places for too long, and that the president is following through on his America First campaign promise. But our colleague, Fox's Jennifer Griffin, spoke to a senior foreign diplomat who charged that today's deadly suicide attack was a quote-unquote direct result of the president signaling to the enemy, in this case ISIS, that the U.S. will be pulling out. And it was awkward, to say the least, that hours after these news reports emerged that ISIS had killed these Americans, the Vice President, Mike Pence, delivered a previously scheduled speech at the State Department where he declared the U.S. can bring home the troops because ISIS, quote unquote, has been defeated. Not so, says Democratic Senator Chris Coons, while Graham, as a Republican ally of the president, suggested the pullout might have led to this attack. Watch.
My concern by the statements made by President Trump is that you had set in motion enthusiasm by the enemy we're fighting. I saw this in Iraq, and I'm now seeing it in Syria.
We don't yet know, but I think President Trump's abrupt announcement that he intended to withdraw all U.S. forces from Syria on a very short-term basis was incredibly ill-advised and partly contributed to Secretary Mattis's resignation.
So you can see the pressure on the president on a number of fronts tonight, in addition to the shutdown, dealing with pressure on Syria after the suicide attack, and now these comments by his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and exactly what it means for the Robert Mueller investigation, Shannon.
All right. Well, let us know if you hear back from Rudy and give us an update. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, what to do about our troops in the Middle East made all the more complicated by the fact that both Presidents Trump and Obama campaigned for getting our troops out, and people voted for them.
I will give our military a new mission on my first day in office: ending this war. George Bush and John McCain don't have a strategy for success in Iraq. They have a strategy for staying in Iraq.
You know, if Bush is insulted, I don't care if he's insulted. What difference? It was a horrible mistake. We should have never been there. Somebody says, oh, that's not good to criticize. I said, criticize? It's one of the worst decisions in the history of our country to go in. We've totally destabilized the Middle East.
Okay, let's see what our Fox News contributors Dan Hoffman, former CIA station chief, and Mark Thiessen, speechwriter for former President George W. Bush, what they think about those comments and where we go from here. Gentlemen, great to have both of you.
Good to be with you, Shannon.
I first want to touch on the loss of life. At last check, at least 16 people, 4 Americans. Tell us, Dan, if you can, the significance of this region, of this area, what it says to you, this attack.
I mean, make no mistake, it's a tragedy, and I've got personal experience from having served in combat zones for years, losing U.S. military and intelligence community colleagues. They're over there eliminating threats which would otherwise be visited on our shores, and that's their mission. And there's no question that these 4 apparently who were killed in action and gave the ultimate sacrifice for our safety and security were trying to fulfill that mission. What happens now for the intelligence community is we take all of our sources, all of our human intelligence and signals intelligence, and we seek out those who committed this attack on the U.S. military. And we'll seek to find out who did it, why they did it, and where they are so that we can find them and bring justice where it's due.
And it sparks all these new conversations. A lot of people expressing concern today that this is what they expected could happen after the president made this announcement about us leaving. But Senator Rand Paul wants the president to stay strong on that plan. He says this. He tweeted this. Sunnis have been killing Shias since the massacre at Karbala in 680 A.D. If we wait until they stop killing each other, we will stay for 1,000 years or more. I agree with real Donald Trump. Bring the troops home. Had a meeting at the White House today. He said this. I've never been prouder of President Donald Trump. In today's meeting, he stood up for a strong America and steadfastly opposed foreign wars. Putting America first means declaring victory in Afghanistan and Syria. President Trump is delivering on his promises. But, Mark, how do you square that with, the promise to protect America with people there who will foment and grow, if not strenuously attacked where they are now?
So what ISIS was doing today was making a very clear statement: we are not defeated. Look, President Trump deserves incredible credit for having removed their physical caliphate, which is a major military achievement, but they are not defeated. If you just put this in context, our intelligence community estimates that they are more powerful today than they were in 2006, before President George W. Bush launched the surge in Iraq that decimated them and put them on their heels and took away all their territory, which then Barack Obama withdrew and allowed them to come back. They have 30,000 fighters fighters today. By contrast, after when Obama withdrew, they had about 700, so they're that much stronger. They have $450 million that they pilfered from Iraqi banks and from other nefarious activities in Iraq. To put that in context, the whole 9/11 operation cost $100,000. So this is still a incredibly powerful terrorist organization. And yes, we want the war to end, but the enemy gets a vote. And so if we stop fighting and they don't, then that's not a good outcome for the United States. So we don't get to decide if the enemy, usually the way wars end is the enemy surrenders. There's a signing ceremony on the deck of the USS Missouri. There's not going to be a signing ceremony. So if they keep fighting and we don't, we have a choice. Do we want to fight them over there, or do we want to fight them over here? We get to choose where the war is fought, but we don't get to choose whether the war is fought.
Well, both Democrats and Republicans expressing concern to the president, hoping he will rethink the plan, at least in the short term. Gentlemen, thank you for lending us your expertise. Great to have you. All right, Democratic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has said time and time again, a border wall is immoral. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, he's Pelosi's number 2. Well, he told Bret Baier tonight he doesn't think the wall is immoral. He also admits some walls work. And he also says the stuff about President Trump being disinvited to deliver the State of the Union address, not official yet. So where are we tonight? As usual, Trace is on the case to tell us more. Hey, Trace.
Hi, Shannon. Let's begin with the shutdown showdown highlights, which include the president meeting today with a bipartisan group of lawmakers, including 7 Democrats. The details of the meeting are thin, but at least a few of those who attended reportedly called it productive. The president also met with a group of GOP senators, though it appears a plan by South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham to reopen the government for 3 weeks while negotiations over border security continue is gaining very little traction. And in a letter to the president, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called on Mr. Trump to delay his January 29th State of the Union address because both the Secret Service and Homeland Security are entangled in the partial government shutdown and may not be able to secure the event. Except senior Homeland Security officials say no one from the Democratic congressional leadership bothered to ask DHS or Secret Service about the State of the Union. And they told us, quoting here, "We are ready." Despite the fact that the Secret Service is not being paid, the protective mission has not changed. It is a no-fail mission. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen added that DHS and Secret Service fully plan to support and secure the State of the Union. Earlier on Special Report, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer was also asked about DHS calling the shutdown a non-issue as far as security goes. Listen.
It's tough to believe that they're on as high a security alert.
And ensure that this for the United States out of this mess. Back to you.
It's a tall order. All right, Greg Palcott, thank you very much. Is the U.S. Constitution no longer up to the task in 2019? Is that what 2020 hopeful Beto O'Rourke is suggesting? Stick around to find out. Plus, Angel families take their cases directly to key Democrats in the middle of the partial government shutdown.
Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall.
One of those angel mothers, Mary Ann Mendoza, tell us about the reception that she got on Capitol Hill. She'll spell it all out for us next.
Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall.
Carrying pictures, the families of loved ones killed by illegal immigrants protesting outside the offices of Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. At the same time, Senate Democrats led by Schumer highlighting the effects of the almost month-long shutdown using the pictures of furloughed federal workers. So let's talk to Fox News contributor, Democratic strategist Leslie Marshall, and angel mother, Mary Ann Mendoza. Great to have both of you with us.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Shannon.
Mary Ann, I want to start with you. You were there as part of these entreaties to both of these key Democrats. Did you make any progress?
We did not. We didn't expect to. We had shown up kind of unexpectedly, but we were hoping, you know, hearing us out there, knowing that there was many of us, that she would at least take the time to come out and say, I'm sorry for your loss. I just don't have time to meet with you. Anything to acknowledge that we exist and that our loved ones existed would have been nice.
Mm-hmm. Leslie, you know, Steny Hoyer, who's the number 2 Democrat now over in the House, Bret Baier asked him tonight whether he also thinks walls are immoral, as the Speaker has been calling them. He said that's not the terminology I would use. That's not the way that it's about whether they work or not. And then quickly a little bit of his interchange with Bret.
So they work some places.
Whether obviously they work some places.
So, Leslie, the acknowledgement, they do work in some places. I mean, there are stats to back that up.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm very sorry for this woman's loss. I've buried a child for different circumstances in 2004. It's a terrible club no one wants membership in, and I mean that sincerely as one mom to another. With regarding to it being immoral, I agree also with Steny Hoyer and also with Senator Chris Coons, who also said, I don't think it's immoral. What many Democrats feel and many Americans feel, so say the polls, is that it's not effective. With regard to him saying it works, well, look, the Democrats aren't saying it with the $1.3 billion that they agreed to on a bipartisan manner that we don't want to repair what's existing and even extend beyond that. If you look at the legislation, they're simply saying the concept that the president has put forth, which he originally campaigned on, a 30-foot wall that spanned the entire length of the country, now to be a 700 to 900-mile wall, doesn't address some of the other issues like drugs coming in through the ports in Pennsylvania, tunnels that they found in 30 days, 3 of them in the past 30 days underground. They want something that's more effective, and they don't feel that a wall would do that.
Let me play something, too, that was an exchange that happened on The View about people who various feelings about the walls.
He has been using, I think, the border wall as sort of this dog whistle for racism. The government is still shut down, and I think it's all about, let's not let all these brown people in, right? Unless they're working for farmers, unless they're working in agriculture. So now will the Republican Party step up to him and say, we don't want this anymore?
There's 42% of this country that support the wall. Are they all racist?
That's a good question.
Marianne, how does that make you feel?
I'm so sick of hearing this talk about racism in this country. Don't take us back into history and make us into people that we're not anymore. And this isn't a racial issue. It's about people being illegally present in our country. And these are the things that Angel families are fighting for to keep this danger out. And I will say this, that a wall may not keep everybody out, but no wall will keep no one out. So we need to think about that, too. There is a way, there is a medium, you know, a common ground to find. But if we have no wall up, we have Border Patrol agents begging for this. We have to think about their safety also. I've been in the company tonight of Hispanic ranchers who live in Texas, and they fear for their lives. They're begging for a wall to be built. And we need to start listening to these people who are first-line defense.
I mean, and Leslie, you talk about the fact that the president at one time was talking about this huge wall. It's going to be concrete. It's going to be the whole way across. The fact that he's now saying these steel slats, it's going to be something different. Maybe it's not every mile. There are acknowledgments within the administration. There are, you know, topographical and geographical things that, you know, rivers in different places where it's not necessarily going to work. I mean, he has modified his position. Do you feel the Democrats have modified their position at all as far as finding a way to meet him halfway?
Well, Democrats have changed their position, obviously, over the years, because there was a time that some Democrats, Chuck Schumer, as part of the Gang of Eight, were, you know, on board for 700 miles, which is would be 700 miles out of the 700 to 900 miles that the president is looking for. I think part of the problem for the Democrats here, and sadly, I mean, Democrats and Republicans are politicians, and they speak to their constituencies. And right now, Democrats have the majority of the people in the country, so say the polls, liking their plan more than Republicans, more than the president's. They don't want a wall. Although they do feel there is a crisis, they don't feel that the wall would affect the crisis. And speaking about the undocumented workers, we have to look at what do we have, like 12, 13 million now in this country.
A lot of people think that's the low estimate.
And the wall, some people say, well, keeps them in, as well as trying to keep other people out. So again, and it's not just semantics, but there is a political element here, Shannon, and I think we'd be remiss not to look at that.
You can't deny that.
Yeah, there is a political element, and Democrats aren't going to help the president keep a Republican campaign promise.
But you have to stop the flow more coming in. We've got enough here, and if you don't put that border security up, we've got too many of these illegal alien criminals who are here, who are being deported and coming back over 15, 16, 22 times. And this is what Angel Families want stopped, because these are the types of people who have affected our families, the repeat illegal alien criminals.
And I do think that's something that people in a bipartisan way agree on. If you're a violent criminal here illegally, that is an issue that people agree. That's where deportation and enforcement needs to happen, regardless of partisan positions. All right, Leslie and Marianne, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Shannon.
All right, police in North Texas looking for your help to find a mother now missing for 11 days. Family and friends are getting desperate for any clue, as it looks like she's gone without a trace. And President Trump's AG nominee told senators at his last confirmation back in 1991 that he believed Roe had been wrongly decided. Well, not surprisingly, Democrats want to know if he still feels that way.
Would you defend Roe v. Wade if it were challenged?
Stick around for Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee herself. What did she think of Barr's reply to that question? A brand new poll giving us some insight tonight into how Americans are feeling about one of the most polarizing issues in the country, abortion. These new numbers come ahead of Friday's annual March for Life right here in Washington. So here's where the abortion fight stands right now.
I am putting pro-life justices on the court.
That was candidate Donald Trump's 2016 promise, predicting the right to abortion as it now exists will soon be overturned. The annual Right to Life March this week marks the 46th anniversary of the landmark Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision, with Vice President Pence expected to speak. Advocates on both sides are energized by recent political developments in Congress, state legislatures, and the courts to either impose near total bans or definitively affirm Roe's legacy.
Have made tremendous progress across the board for women's education, for women's health, and for women's economic status. There's no reason to roll that progress back.
The new Democratic majority in the House has already offered legislation to repeal the current federal ban on abortion funding with tax dollars.
We actually have a pro-choice majority in the U.S. House of Representatives.
But a new Marist Knights of Columbus poll finds 2/3 surveyed think the Supreme Court should either allow states to enact restrictions or it should allow states to ban the procedure altogether. Conservatives are putting their resources into state laws designed to continue chipping away at access to the procedure, including so-called heartbeat bills to ban abortions when a fetal heartbeat is detected. And Indiana's law, signed by then-Governor Pence, banning abortions based on race, gender, or disability, including Down syndrome. It's now pending at the U.S. Supreme Court.
The court needs to do its job. There are many more cases working their way through litigation right now that have to do directly with state laws that have been passed to protect unborn children, to protect women inside abortion facilities. So I do believe that sooner or later they're going to have to address it.
Well, abortion also on the minds of those senators questioning President Trump's Attorney General nominee this week. Let's bring in Republican Senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, who is on the Senate Judiciary Committee and chaired part of that hearing today. Great to have you with us.
Good to be here.
There was an uproar, I heard, from the left after they heard Bill Barr, the nominee's answers when it came to Roe v. Wade. They are convinced that he is going to work to deconstruct it, to get rid of it. And they even talk about you and Senator Joni Ernst now being part of the plan. This is what they say on Rewire.com. It says, with Republicans almost singularly focused on finding judicial nominees committed to upending legal abortion and rolling back civil rights protections for LGBTQ people, Blackburn and Ernst are perfect foot soldiers to help continue that mission in the Judiciary Committee. Your response?
Well, first of all, they need to realize that Bill Barr is not a judicial nominee. He is the president's nominee for Attorney General of the United States. And I think he was pretty clear on where he stood on that issue. And he even talked about back in the 90s and when they were looking at a different time and in a different era at Roe v. Wade, how he said that may have been something best decided by the states. And what is so interesting to me, Shannon, is so many people, whether they're pro-choice or they're pro-life, will say, you know, maybe this is an issue for the states to pass laws pertaining to abortion and not the federal government.
Well, and I know one of the things that you've sponsored now, one of the first bills out, maybe your first as a senator now, the Title X Abortion Provider Prohibition Act that blocks certain federal funding from going to clinics that will provide abortions or refer people for abortions. And not surprisingly, you're taking heat over that.
Of course, but it's S105 is the bill number, and what it does is to look at where those funds go that are designated under Title X for women's health. And we have 13,540 federally qualified health care clinics in the country that are focused on providing health care to women who are underserved. There are 655 Planned Parenthood clinics. What we're simply saying is, look, if you do abortions, that Title X funding that is there for women's health care should not be going to abortion clinics. It should go to clinics that are designated to serve women's health care.
Well, and you know, the Guttmacher Institute has done a lot of work on this. They say the studies show that those federally qualified health care centers or health clinics, they don't have the personnel and the ability to subsume the people that they would get from like Planned Parenthood or other clinics that would lose this funding. So they're critical of that point. But I want to read you something that NABRAL said as well today, obviously pro-choice group. They say instead of working to fund the government and ensure that struggling federal employees get paid, this is what Republicans are focusing on, trying to cut off access to breast cancer screenings, STI testing, and more for millions of women. Enough is enough. Is that what this is all about?
Not at all. This is about making certain that the money goes where there is need, which is to women who are underserved in their health care. Planned Parenthood, by and large, will tell you their big business is abortion. If you need a women's well check, many times they will send you to a health care clinic. Those are the ones that are providing that service. We're saying that is where that money ought to go so that more women have the opportunity to access health care and enjoy a better quality of life, get the care and treatment that they need. That's what this is about, is making certain that those resources go where they're needed.
Well, we know it's controversial, but we will keep an eye on this bill, see where it goes, and whether it has a future in the House at all as well. Senator, thank you for dropping in.
Good to be
have
with you.
us.
Thank you.
Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi facing backlash tonight after citing security concerns as a reason to delay or cancel the president's State of the Union speech before Congress. Well, tonight's Power Panel is here to break that down after the break. Stick around. Austin, Ben, and Eric next.
That's a security decision which is completely out of my hands. This is a housekeeping matter in the Congress of the United States so that we can honor the responsibility of the invitation we extended to the president. You can make it from the Oval Office if you want.
What is going to happen with the State of the Union? Well, let's talk about it with tonight's Power Panel. Former economic advisor to President Obama, Austin Goolsbee, Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, and Eric Metaxas, bestselling author, conservative commentator. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's this talk tonight of whether or not the State of the Union can go as planned, where the president goes over to the Hill. It is quite an undertaking. Chad Pergram, our senior Capitol Hill producer, tweeted this out. He said, from a Pelosi spokesperson, the office of the Speaker has been contacted by a furloughed DHS employee who expressed serious concerns that the department has insufficient staffing levels to sufficiently manage the security needs for the upcoming State of the Union due to furloughs of critical staff. Ben.
You know, first off, I have to say this is kind of a ludicrous conjecture, given that we're going to see a couple of events take place here in the next couple of days in Washington, D.C. The March for Life on Friday, the Women's March on Saturday, both of which have significant security concerns themselves, particularly given the locations that they're going to be. The idea that this is a security-based decision is just laughable. And I think the media in any other context, if it were Speaker John Boehner or Speaker Paul Ryan saying that there wasn't enough security during a shutdown to allow for President Obama to give the State of the Union address, would be treated as the kind of laughable conjecture it is. This is a political statement on Pelosi's part, and it's clear to everyone who knows how this process works what that is.
Well, our own John Roberts, who covers the White House, says, according to his reporting, the Secret Service says they were never contacted by anyone in Democratic leadership. DHS Secretary Nelson tweeted this today. The Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Secret Service are fully prepared to support and secure the State of the Union. We thank the service for their mission focus and dedication and for all they do each day to secure our homeland. Austin?
Well, look, I appreciate the Secret Service and everything they do. I have no doubt they can do the job. I personally, when I was in the White House, benefited from their protection at presidential events all over the place. You got the President of the United States forcing tens or even hundreds of thousands of workers to go to work and not be paid. I think it's totally appropriate to say we're not going to give the President the ability to do a PR stunt in which he's going to force the Secret Service to come down and defend him and not be paid. Now, we've never had a State of the Union take place during a government shutdown. I hope that we can sort this out, that the two parties will sit down and figure out something, and we can just have the State of the Union on the regular day and the government won't be shut down. But if it is shut down, personally, I don't think that he should be giving the State of the Union.
Well, Eric, a lot of people are, surmising that the Speaker doesn't want him to give it either because he's going to have to sit there. They're going to have to sit there, Democrats and Republicans alike. And if the shutdown is still going on and somehow they do have the State of the Union, he is not going to pull any punches, and they're going to have to sit there for it.
Listen, nobody outside the beltway of D.C. cares about the dopey shutdown. I don't live in D.C., and I just find it hilarious when people who live in this city just freak out about this as though it's the end of the world. I have to say, Nancy Pelosi, let's cut to the chase. She's scared to death. It will be a nightmare for her politically. They never thought that Trump would push the shutdown to where it would interfere with the State of the Union. He now has a bully pulpit. He's going to go on there. There are probably, the gallery will be filled with angel mothers, people whose children were murdered by illegal immigrants. The scary thing for Nancy Pelosi is that this would take place. This will be a political nightmare for Schumer and for Pelosi. She knows it. She'll do anything to stop it.
Well, I would bet there will be some of the 800,000 furloughed federal workers that will be there as guests of the Democrats. I would be surprised if they're not. Okay, let's talk about a Democrat who's gotten a lot of attention. He lost his Senate race, but he came on strong in Texas, former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. And